They say you never truly know someone until they're gone. I thought I knew my husband. I thought 28 years of marriage meant something. I thought the man I buried last Tuesday was the man I married all those years ago. I was wrong about everything. My name is Margaret, and I'm 52 years old. 3 weeks ago, I became a widow. My husband Richard died of a sudden heart attack while working in his home office. One moment he was alive, reviewing financial reports, and the next he was gone. The doctors said it was quick. Painless. They said I should find comfort in that. But there's no comfort in losing the person you built your entire life around. The funeral was on a gray Tuesday morning. The kind of day that feels designed for grief. Rain threatened but never came. The sky just hung there, heavy and oppressive, like it was holding its breath. I stood by Richard's casket in my black dress, accepting condolences from neighbors, colleagues, distant relatives I barely recognized. Everyone said the same things. He was a good man. He'll be missed. You were so lucky to have him. I nodded and thanked them, playing the role of the grieving widow perfectly. Because that's what I was. Wasn't I? The service was beautiful. Richard's brother gave a eulogy that made everyone cry. He talked about Richard's dedication to family, his work ethic, his generous spirit. He talked about the man who coached Little League, who volunteered at the food bank, who never missed a Sunday dinner. I listened to every word and felt proud. This was my husband. This was the man I loved. After the burial, we gathered at our home for the reception. My daughter Sarah helped me arrange everything. Sandwiches, coffee, comfort food that no one really wanted but everyone expected. People filled our living room, speaking in hushed tones, sharing memories. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, present but not really there. That's when she appeared. I was standing near the fireplace, holding a cup of tea I hadn't touched, when I felt someone beside me. I turned and saw a woman I'd never seen before. She was elegant, probably in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple black dress and minimal jewelry. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, but her expression was controlled. Determined. She leaned close to me, so close I could smell her perfume. Something floral and expensive. And then she whispered, just 3 words that would change everything. Check the basement. Before I could respond, before I could even process what she'd said, she pulled back and disappeared into the crowd. I looked around frantically, trying to find her again, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air. I grabbed Sarah's arm as she walked past. Did you see that woman? The one who was just talking to me? Sarah looked confused. What woman, Mom? You were standing alone. No, there was a woman. Dark hair, black dress. She was right here. Sarah squeezed my hand gently. Mom, everyone here is wearing black. Are you okay? Do you need to lie down? I shook my head. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe grief was playing tricks on my mind. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. But those 3 words kept echoing in my head. Check the basement. What did that mean? Why would a stranger tell me to check my own basement? The rest of the reception passed in a blur. People left, offering final condolences and promises to check in on me. Sarah stayed to help clean up, then she had to leave to pick up her kids from school. And then I was alone. Completely alone in the house I'd shared with Richard for over 2 decades. The silence was deafening. I tried to dismiss the woman's words. I told myself it was nothing, just some confused guest who'd had too much wine. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Check the basement. Why the basement? Richard barely used the basement. It was just storage, old furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations. Nothing important. Nothing worth checking. But what if there was something? 3 days passed. 3 days of casseroles from neighbors, phone calls from Richard's colleagues, and paperwork. So much paperwork. Death creates an avalanche of bureaucracy. Insurance claims, bank accounts, legal documents. I spent hours on the phone with companies, explaining over and over that my husband was dead, that I needed to transfer accounts, that I needed death certificates sent here and there. It was during one of these calls, while I was on hold with the insurance company, that I found myself staring at the basement door. It was just a door. Plain white, slightly scuffed at the bottom where Richard used to kick it open when his hands were full. But now it looked different. Ominous, somehow. Like it was keeping secrets. I hung up the phone without finishing the call. I stood and walked to the basement door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. This was ridiculous. There was nothing down there. Nothing but dust and memories. But I had to know. I had to understand why that woman told me to check. The door creaked as I opened it. The wooden stairs descended into darkness. I flipped the light switch and a single bulb illuminated the stairway. I hadn't been down here in months. Maybe longer. Richard always handled the basement. He said the stairs were too steep for me, that he didn't want me to fall. How thoughtful. How protective. How convenient. I descended slowly, gripping the railing. The basement smelled musty, like old cardboard and forgotten things. At the bottom of the stairs, I looked around. It looked exactly as I remembered. Storage shelves along one wall, stacked with boxes. Richard's old workbench, covered in tools he never used. An ancient treadmill we bought during a fitness phase that lasted about 3 weeks. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth whispering about at a funeral. I was about to turn back, ready to accept that I'd been imagining things, when I noticed something. Behind the shelving unit on the far wall, there was a gap. Just a small space, barely visible, but it was there. And beyond it, I could see the edge of something. A door frame. My heart started pounding. We'd lived in this house for 15 years. I'd been in this basement dozens of times. How had I never noticed a door back there? I approached the shelving unit and tried to move it. It was heavy, loaded with boxes, but I was determined. I pulled and pushed, ignoring the protest of my muscles, until I'd created enough space to squeeze behind it. And there it was. A door. A locked door that I never knew existed in my own home. The door was newer than the rest of the basement. The wood was cleaner, the handle shinier. Someone had installed this recently. Someone had hidden it deliberately. Richard had hidden it deliberately. I ran back upstairs, my mind racing. Where would Richard keep keys? I searched his office, rifling through drawers, dumping out containers. Nothing. I checked his dresser, his nightstand, even his coat pockets. Nothing. I was about to give up when I remembered his desk had a locked drawer. A drawer I'd never opened because Richard said it was just old tax documents. I found a screwdriver and forced the drawer open. Inside, among papers and receipts, was a small key ring with 3 keys. One of them had to open that basement door. I ran back downstairs, squeezed behind the shelf again, and tried each key. The third one clicked. The lock turned. The door opened. Beyond it was a room I never knew existed. A small office, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. There was a desk with a computer, a filing cabinet, a small bookshelf. And on the walls, there were photographs. Dozens of photographs. None of them included me. I stepped inside, feeling like I'd entered another dimension. Another life. Another world where I didn't exist. The photographs showed Richard with a woman. The same woman from the funeral. The one who told me to check the basement. They were smiling, laughing, embracing. In some photos, there was a boy. A young teenager with Richard's eyes and his smile. They looked happy. They looked like a family. I felt sick. My legs gave out and I sat down hard on the floor. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Richard wouldn't do this. He couldn't do this. We had a good marriage. We were happy. Weren't we? But the evidence was all around me. The photographs didn't lie. The computer, when I managed to turn it on, was filled with emails. Love letters. Plans for visits. Promises of a future together. The filing cabinet contained bank statements for accounts I'd never seen. Credit card bills for purchases I knew nothing about. Receipts from restaurants in cities Richard supposedly visited for work. Everything was there. A complete second life, documented and organized. 15 years of lies, preserved in a hidden room beneath my feet. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe. I read every email, looked at every photo, examined every document. I pieced together the truth like a horrible jigsaw puzzle. The woman's name was Claire. She lived 3 towns over. They'd met at a conference. It was supposed to be a one-night thing, but it became more. Much more. She got pregnant. Richard promised to leave me, to start fresh with her. But he never did. He just lived 2 lives, bouncing between 2 families like it was normal. Like it was sustainable. There were birthday cards from the boy, whose name was Daniel. He called Richard Dad. There were school photos, report cards, drawings. All the things a father keeps. All the evidence of a child Richard had with someone else. A child I knew nothing about. I found gifts Richard had bought for Claire. Jewelry, perfume, books. Some of them I recognized because he'd bought the same things for me. The same necklace for our anniversary that he'd given her for Valentine's Day. The same perfume. The same lies, packaged differently. The rage came suddenly. It burned through the shock and the grief and the confusion. I wanted to scream. I wanted to destroy everything in that room. But instead, I carefully collected documents. I took photos with my phone. I gathered evidence, though I wasn't sure what I was gathering it for. Richard was dead. I couldn't confront him. I couldn't demand answers. I couldn't watch him squirm and make excuses. But Claire was alive. And she had answers. I found her address in the documents. She lived at 42 Maple Street in Riverside. A 40-minute drive from our house. Close enough to visit regularly. Far enough to keep the secret. I didn't think. I just grabbed my purse, got in my car, and drove. It was almost midnight when I pulled up in front of a modest 2-story house with blue shutters. The lights were still on downstairs. I sat in my car for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. What was I doing here? What did I expect to happen? But I'd come this far. I had to finish it. I walked up to the front door and knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened. And there she was. Claire. She looked different without the funeral makeup, more tired, more real. When she saw me, her face went pale. "Margaret," she whispered. "You told me to check the basement," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. "I checked. Now I need answers." She stepped back, holding the door open. "Come in." Her home was warm and lived in. There were photos on the walls, but I couldn't look at them yet. She led me to the living room and we sat across from each other like adversaries preparing for battle. "I didn't know how else to tell you," Claire said. "I thought about calling, writing a letter, but nothing seemed right. And then at the funeral, I saw you standing there, grieving for a man who'd been lying to both of us, and I just couldn't let you keep believing the lie." "How long?" I asked. "How long did you know about me?" She looked down at her hands. "From the beginning. He told me he was married. He said it was over, that you were staying together for appearances, for your daughter. He said he was going to leave you. He said it for 15 years. And you believed him?" "I wanted to," she said softly. "I was 30 when we met. I'd never been in a serious relationship. He was charming, successful, attentive. He made me feel special. And when I got pregnant, he seemed happy. He said it was the push he needed to finally make the change. But the change never came. Did he live here? With you? 3 nights a week, usually. Weekends when he could get away. He told you it was work, didn't he? Business trips, conferences, late meetings. I nodded. All those nights I'd slept alone, thinking Richard was in a hotel somewhere, working hard for our family. He was here. Playing father to another child. Playing husband to another woman. Daniel, I said. The boy. Does he know? He knows Richard was his father. He knows Richard had another family. I couldn't lie to him. When he got old enough to ask questions, I told him the truth. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Richard always promised that someday, when the time was right, we could be a real family. Daniel believed him. I believed him. We were both fools. Where is Daniel now? Upstairs. Asleep. Richard's death destroyed him. He lost his father, and he couldn't even grieve publicly. Couldn't tell his friends, couldn't go to the funeral as his son. I brought him anyway. We stood in the back. I thought he deserved to say goodbye. Something shifted in me then. I'd come here angry, ready to blame Claire for destroying my marriage. But she hadn't destroyed anything. Richard had destroyed everything. He'd built 2 lives and maintained them through elaborate lies. He'd made promises he never intended to keep. He'd hurt everyone who loved him. I'm sorry, Claire said. I know that doesn't mean much. I know I should have walked away years ago. But I loved him. And I kept thinking that eventually, he'd choose us. Choose me. I was wrong. He chose neither of us, I said. He chose himself. He chose the lie. We sat in silence for a moment. 2 women who'd loved the same man, who'd been betrayed by the same man, who were now left to pick up the pieces of the same shattered life. There's money, I said finally. Life insurance, savings, the house. Richard left everything to me in his will. He didn't mention you or Daniel. Claire's face hardened. I don't want his money. But Daniel deserves something. He's Richard's son. He has a right to part of his father's estate. Margaret, you don't have to. Yes, I do, I interrupted. Richard may not have done the right thing in life, but I can do the right thing now. Daniel is innocent in all of this. He deserves support. College money, at least. Something that says his father acknowledged him, even if it's too late. Claire started crying then. Not gentle tears, but deep, wrenching sobs. I found myself moving to sit beside her, putting my arm around her shoulders. We cried together, 2 women who'd been played by the same man, who'd wasted years on someone who didn't deserve either of us. When the tears finally stopped, Claire told me everything. She filled in the gaps in the story, told me about the birthdays Richard missed, the holidays he couldn't attend, the school events where Daniel looked for his father in the crowd and never found him. She told me about the promises Richard made and broke, the excuses that became routine, the hope that turned to resignation. Did you love him? Claire asked me as I was leaving. Was your marriage real, at least? I thought about it. I thought about 28 years of memories, of moments that felt genuine, of love that seemed true. I thought I did, I said honestly. I thought I knew him. But the man I loved was a fiction. He never really existed. I drove home as the sun was rising. The world looked different somehow. Sharper. More real. I'd lived in a comfortable illusion for so long, and now that it was shattered, everything was clearer. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I met with lawyers. I arranged for Daniel to receive a portion of Richard's estate. My daughter Sarah was furious when she found out. She screamed at me, accused me of betraying her father's memory. But I held firm. I showed her the photos, the documents, the evidence of Richard's double life. She didn't believe it at first. How could she? Her father was her hero. But eventually, the truth became impossible to deny. Richard's family was worse. His brother threatened to sue me. His mother called me cruel and vindictive. They couldn't accept that their Richard, their golden boy, had been capable of such sustained deception. They wanted to preserve the illusion. But I was done with illusions. I sold the house. I couldn't stay there, not with that hidden room in the basement, not with the ghost of Richard's lies in every corner. I found a small apartment in the city, something that was mine alone, untainted by memories. The hardest part was rebuilding my sense of self. For 28 years, I'd been Richard's wife. I defined myself by that role. I'd made decisions based on what was good for us, what was good for our family. Now there was no us. There was just me. And I had to figure out who that was. I started therapy. I joined a support group for people dealing with infidelity, though most of them discovered the truth while their spouses were still alive. I was unique in my pain. I couldn't confront Richard. I couldn't demand explanations. I couldn't watch him face consequences. He'd escaped all of that by dying. But in some ways, that made it easier. There was no decision to make about staying or leaving. No couples counseling, no attempts at reconciliation. The relationship was over, definitively, completely. I could grieve for it and move on without looking back. Claire and I stayed in touch. Not friends, exactly, but allies. Survivors of the same shipwreck. She sent me updates about Daniel. I sent her copies of old photos of Richard, ones from before he knew her, so she could give Daniel a fuller picture of his father. We were united by our shared experience, by our mutual desire to ensure Daniel didn't suffer more than he already had. 6 months after Richard's death, I did something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I enrolled in a creative writing class at the local community college. I'd always loved writing, had always thought I might write a book someday, but life got in the way. Richard got in the way. Now there was nothing in the way but my own fear. I wrote about my experience. Not in the fictionalized way most writers do, but as a memoir. Raw and honest and painful. I wrote about the funeral, the whisper, the hidden room. I wrote about Claire and Daniel, about the photographs and emails, about the systematic deception of a man everyone thought was good. I wrote about the shattering of my identity and the slow, painful process of building a new one. My instructor encouraged me to pursue publication. She said my story was important, that other people needed to hear it. I wasn't sure. It felt too personal, too exposed. But I thought about all the women who might be living similar lies, who might never know the truth, who might waste their whole lives on men who didn't deserve them. So I found an agent. I revised and edited. And eventually, my book was published. The Basement, a memoir of marriage and betrayal. It became a minor bestseller. I did interviews, appeared on podcasts, spoke at events. Women reached out to me from all over the country, thanking me for telling my story, sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival. I never expected to become a voice for anyone. I just wanted to understand what happened to me. But in telling my truth, I helped others find theirs. And that gave me purpose. It gave me meaning beyond being Richard's widow. Sarah eventually came around. It took time, and many difficult conversations, but she began to understand that her father was more complicated than she'd known. She met Daniel once, awkwardly, at a coffee shop I arranged. They didn't become close, but they acknowledged each other. They shared a father, after all, even if they hadn't shared a childhood. Daniel graduated high school this year. He's going to college in the fall, studying engineering. The money from Richard's estate made that possible. Claire sent me a photo of him in his cap and gown, smiling. He has Richard's smile. It hurt to see it, but it also felt right. Richard's legacy wasn't just betrayal. It was also this boy, this young man with his whole future ahead of him. As for me, I'm 53 now. I have an apartment I love, a career as a writer I never expected, and a sense of self I fought hard to build. I date occasionally, though I'm careful. Trust doesn't come easily anymore. But I'm open to the possibility of love, real love, the kind that doesn't hide in basements. People often ask me if I regret those 28 years with Richard. If I wish I'd known the truth sooner. The answer is complicated. Yes, I wish I hadn't been deceived. Yes, I'm angry about the wasted time. But those years also gave me Sarah, gave me experiences and memories that shaped who I am. I can't simply wish them away. What I regret is that Richard never gave me a choice. He decided for both of us what our marriage would be. He decided that I didn't need the truth, that I was better off in ignorance. He robbed me of my agency, my ability to make informed decisions about my own life. That's the real betrayal. Not the affair, not even the second family, but the arrogance of believing he had the right to construct my reality. But I've taken that power back. I've reconstructed my reality on my own terms. I know who I am now, independent of any man, any relationship, any illusion. I'm Margaret. I'm a writer, a mother, a survivor. I'm enough, all by myself. Last week, I got a letter from Claire. Daniel had asked her to send it. Inside was a thank you note, written in Daniel's careful handwriting. He thanked me for the college money, for acknowledging him as Richard's son, for not punishing him for his father's mistakes. He said he hoped to meet me someday, properly, and that he was sorry for everything that happened. I cried when I read it. Not from pain, but from something else. Relief, maybe. Or hope. This boy, who'd been a secret his whole life, was finding his way into the light. And I'd helped make that possible. I wrote back. I told Daniel I'd like to meet him too, when he was ready. I told him that none of this was his fault, that he deserved all the good things coming his way. I told him that his father was complicated and flawed, but that he didn't have to be defined by that. He could be whoever he chose to be. That's the lesson I've learned. We're not defined by what's done to us, by the lies we're told, by the betrayals we endure. We're defined by how we respond. By whether we let the pain destroy us or transform us. By whether we choose bitterness or growth. I chose growth. I chose truth. I chose myself. And that makes all the difference. If you've experienced betrayal, if you've discovered that your life wasn't what you thought it was, I want you to know something. You will survive this. It doesn't feel like it now. It feels like the end of everything. But it's not the end. It's a beginning. A chance to build something real, something true, something yours. Check your basements. Not the literal ones, though maybe those too. But check the hidden places in your relationships. Ask the questions you're afraid to ask. Demand the truth you deserve. And if you find that you've been living a lie, know that you have the strength to walk away from it. To build something better. I did. And if I can do it at 52, starting from nothing, starting from betrayal and loss and shattered illusions, then so can you. The woman at the funeral gave me the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. She gave me the truth. It was painful and devastating and world-shattering. But it was also liberating. Because you can't heal from a lie. You can only heal from the truth. So check the basement. Whatever that means for you. Check the basement, find the truth, and then build your life on that foundation. Build it strong. Build it real. Build it yours. That's what I did. And I've never been more myself than I am right now, standing in my truth, living my authentic life, free from the weight of someone else's deception. If my story resonates with you, leave a comment below. Tell me your truth. Share your journey. We heal together. And please, subscribe to this channel for more stories of survival, truth, and transformation. You're not alone in this. None of us are alone. The truth may hurt. But lies hurt more. And freedom, when you finally find it, is worth every moment of pain. Check the basement. Find your truth. Build your life. You deserve nothing less.